Hi. Yeah. I'm going to place an order for delivery, please. All right. Large meat lovers pizza. Order of cheesy bread. And a 2-liter of Coke, please. Yeah, the address. Okay, you know Camp Crystal Lake? Yeah, the one with the curse, yeah. So you're gonna go to Camp Crystal Lake, you're gonna go to the main entrance, and you're gonna take... I know you didn't ask for directions, but it's much easier if I just tell you the directions than the address. Okay, 6969 Cody's Love Shack Lane. Hello? Hello? Yeah, hi. I'm going to place an order for delivery, please. A large meat lovers pizza, order of cheesy bread, and a 2-liter Coke. That's all I need. Do you need the address? Can I just give you directions? It's much easier if I just give you... It's much easier if I just give... 6969 Cody's Love Shack Lane. Hello? Hello, I'd like to place an order for delivery, please, of a very unusual address. I'm aware of this. Please do not hang up on me. This is a legit address. I'm very hungry. I have money. Okay, good. Large meat lovers pizza. Order of cheesy bread. 2-liter of Coke. That's all I need. Thank you. Address. Address is 6969 Cody's Love Shack. Jesus Christmas! Holy Jesus, God damn! Holy Jesus, jumping Christmas shit! Fuck it. I'm not even hungry anymore. So Friday the 13th, the final chapter, tells the story yet again of Jason surviving his wounds from the previous film, comes back to ensue vengeance upon whoever is in his territory, only this time he has to face off with the one, the only, Corey Feldman.
Get it, all she gonna do is twerk. Hit the club, tell him.
Alright guys, welcome back to the Friday the 13th review series. I am very excited to get to the final chapter because it's definitely one of my favorites, and I think this is a huge contender for everybody's favorite of the franchise. It's often either 2, 4, or 6 that I've seen that people pick as their favorite Jason movie, so the final chapter, one of the best of this franchise. Cannot wait to get into it, but before I get into this review, quick little commercial break. I'm sure you've noticed the t-shirt. I have opened up a merchandise store over on Spreadshirt. You can follow the link down here below in the video description, or just go to spreadshirt.com and search Cody Leach and you will find my store. But I've got 4 designs, one of them designed by me, 3 of them so far designed by the great Woody Bowen. Got to give him a shout out. Awesome stuff, guys. You got t-shirts, hoodies, phone cases, water bottles, tank tops, all kind of cool stuff. And if you do happen to buy a t-shirt, make sure you send a picture to me, either on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, however you can get it to me, so I can put you in a future video wearing Cody Leach merchandise. Now that commercial break is over, on to the final chapter. So this was the one when they decided we're gonna kill off Jason. They've had their successes. They didn't want to kind of count their chickens too early. They said, you know what, let's go out on top. Let's go out while this thing is firing on all cylinders. Let's give a badass final chapter for Jason Voorhees, and then we'll move on to do something else. And I haven't done my research, but I think this might be the first movie, or at least one of the first movies, to kind of set that precedent that's kind of the cliche in horror movies, where if you put the word final in your movie title, it is never the final chapter. You got this one, you got Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, you got The Final Destination. Bitch, please, there's gonna be another. But what's great about this final chapter is it's the only one that I can think of that I've seen that definitely makes everything bigger and badder and tries to go out on a huge high note for a final chapter. So getting right into my positives for Friday the 13th, the final chapter. First of all, which is something that I can't say for pretty much any of the other Friday the 13th movies, except for maybe pieces of 2, is that the characters are really good in this one. They're really entertaining. They all kind of have their own quirks, their own personality, their own little pieces of backstory. They're not just stock characters that are thrown on there for cannon fodder. You actually are interested in these characters. You're entertained by them. You're curious on how they're going to interact with each other. You're curious on what order Jason's going to take them out in, because you got characters like Crispin Glover's character, who's extremely entertaining to watch. You got other characters like the dude who's just seemed like he's fucking high all the time, and he's the guy who unfortunately is the only one that didn't get laid that night, so he's the dude staying up late, drinking beers and watching TV. We've all been there. But he's entertaining to watch. You got the couple who's singing and doing everything in the shower. They're entertaining to watch. It's one of the few Friday the 13th movies where I don't think that the characters are absolutely throwaways, they're terribly written, or you have maybe 1 or 2 standouts, the rest of the people I couldn't give a shit about. I'm genuinely interested and genuinely entertained by these characters. Going along with that, another big positive and kind of one of the big things that makes this movie stand out is Corey Feldman as our character, Tommy Jarvis. Now, it's both a positive that Corey Feldman is in this role and a positive that we have a character like Tommy Jarvis in this movie, because you don't see kids very often in horror movies, especially the Friday the 13th series, which is fucking weird since it's a camp counselor movie series. You never see kids till part 6, but you get Tommy Jarvis in this, who doesn't seem like he's going to be the most significant character at first. It's just a familiar face. You got Corey Feldman, who at the same time was in The Goonies and a couple other movies. This is whenever he was kind of getting his rise as a child actor, and he's very good in this. This is when Corey Feldman was at the top of his game, I think. This is around the time of like Stand By Me and Goonies, all these great movies that you look at Corey Feldman and you go, those are the movies I remember that guy for. And Final Chapter was when he kind of had to take on this role of kind of the nerdy kid. He's got these movie masks that he makes, which I have no idea how the fuck that kid makes those masks, but we'll move on from that. And he has to kind of go through this journey of being this normal kind of geeky kid to being the one to take on Jason Voorhees and finally take him out. Or so it seemed. And even though we didn't get to see it completely come to fruition in this movie, obviously, we get to see it in the next 2 movies, I like the fact that they created a character of Tommy Jarvis that's kind of like your recurring character that has to face off against Jason. Jason's nemesis, if you will. Now, there's 3 completely different interpretations of this character. We'll get into the other 2 whenever I get to those movies, but I think that Corey Feldman is my favorite version of Tommy Jarvis, just because I like that innocence of the child versus this ultimate evil angle that we have going on. And I just like the entertaining nature of Corey Feldman. Like, one of my favorite scenes in this movie, because I was totally that kid. Not that I ever saw somebody naked in a window, but my reaction to the way that Corey Feldman sees these 2 young teenagers kind of stripping down, getting ready to have sex across the way, and he can look through their window. My reaction as a kid would have been identical to Corey Feldman. Another thing that I love about the final chapter, especially while in comparison to the first 3, especially after the tone of the last one, is that they go for a very dark, serious, and brutal tone with the final chapter. This is the darkest by far of the first 4 movies, and it's really one of the darkest of the entire franchise. From the way that it's shot, from the tones and the music, from the way that Jason moves, to the brutality of the kills, to the seriousness somewhat of some of the characters, and just the overall tone that Joseph Zito went for with this movie, I love, because it just feels like a more traditional slasher movie to me. Some of the other movies I kind of feel like are B movies, and they kind of go for horror comedy to a degree, maybe unintentionally, but the final chapter to me feels like a legit horror movie. It feels like it is there to actually give some tension, to give some scares, and there's a serious argument to be made that this might be the scariest and the most tense of any of the Friday the 13th movies. And one of the reasons for that is the great Ted White, who plays Jason in this movie. a serious contender for my favorite Jason Voorhees. I might do a ranking of my Jason Voorhees actors, so I'm not going to give a definitive answer for that yet, but what Ted White brought to this role was like he took what Richard Brooker did and just took it to the next level. He went for the more dark, brutal, not taking any shit, I'm here to fuck you up Jason Voorhees, and it totally comes through. Partially due to the way that it's shot, the way that they kind of keep Jason in the shadows for most of the movie, even though you know it's Jason Voorhees. They have a good method of not necessarily trying to hide that it's Jason Voorhees, but just keeping him in the shadows and making him a little bit more of a silent stalker. And holy shit, those kills are awesome. You get the return of Tom Savini, and you can tell just from the opening kills, the first 2 kills of this movie, not only does it set the tone for the rest of the movie on how serious and badass this is going to be for a final chapter, but this lets you know that Tom Savini is back with a fucking vengeance for the final chapter. A serious contender for my favorite kill of the franchise. You're going to hear that a lot in this review. Serious contender for my favorite. The fucking hacksaw kill that he gets the guy who's like the coroner in the beginning of this movie, starts sawing the dude's neck with this hacksaw, and then just spins his head completely 180 while it's still like 2/3 connected. It looks wicked as hell. And that's right after the nurse gets fucking gutted from fucking stem to sternum. Okay, she doesn't have a stem, from hole to sternum, whatever you want to call it.
Read my lips. Leave me alone!
But all of the kills in this movie are awesome. I mean, they're brutal, they make you wince a little bit. The practical effects work is just fucking phenomenal by Savini. I mean, you got like Crispin Glover's death, which is brutal. You go all the way down to even Jason Voorhees' death himself, with the machete across the head, and then he falls down and it kind of slides across his skull. That stuff is just like from a seriously dark, twisted mind. And whoever came up with that, whether it was Tom Savini or whoever gave him the effects that they wanted done, you are a sadistic genius. So hats off to you, sir. And also something I think should be said, because it's kind of a staple of this franchise. If you are into kind of the TNA aspect of Friday the 13th, I think that the final chapter has the most gorgeous collection of women that you're going to see in most of this franchise. So 4 stars for that alone, right guys? And I will give this movie credit as well. I don't know if it's unintentional or if they totally knew how awkwardly hilarious it was going to be. There's some genuinely good comedy in this movie. Some of it doesn't feel like it should be comedy. Some of it does, like surrounding Crispin Glover, his dance, and how he's so fucking horny, and the whole dead fuck conversation when they're going to the actual cabin that they're going to be staying in. But it seems like the coroner jumping around, freaking out whenever Jason's arm touches him when he's about to fuck the nurse, to the hitchhiker who comes into play and kind of teams up trying to hunt down Jason because his sister's been lost, and when Jason's killing him, he's like, "Ah, he's killing me!" Run! Oh my God! Run! He's killing me! Ah! It's fucking hilarious. Like, you watch it and it's so ridiculously bad that if it wasn't for the execution that they somehow geniusly put into the final chapter, it would be a gigantic negative in any other movie. You'd be like, what the fuck? Where did that come from? But in the midst of the final chapter, it's like a gigantic breath of relief. Like, there's so much tension and darkness going on. You get to a scene like that, and it just kind of loosens you up, and you love it. And the fucking comedy in this movie, it's awesome. There's nothing else I can say. It's ridiculously awesome. Now moving into my negatives, I honestly don't have too many, but there are some things about it that I think could have been done better. Like, you know, first of all, the thing that kind of bugs me, especially if you're marathoning these movies the way that I've been doing this review series, I kind of get a little bit bored and a little bit tired of the Friday the 13th setup and formula by the time we get to this one. Now, I think that they execute that formula the best in the final chapter, so it's kind of maybe a half positive, half negative, but the setup of just insert teenagers and let Jason kill them at a camp setting just feels so tired by this point, which luckily kind of gets changed up by the time part 6 comes around, but it just felt like by the time I got to part 4, it's like, fuck, another one of these damn movies. But luckily they execute it well. So, like I said, kind of between a positive and a negative. My other negative, which again is a very small negative, I have very little negative to say about this movie. It does go back to the continuity thing. Now, you get this character that comes in, the hitchhiker character, the he's killing me guy. As awesome as a character if he is, and as nice of a breath of fresh air it is to insert a character like that who's just not a part of the teenagers. He actually comes in and brings a little bit of a backstory and a lore to this Jason curse that's going on, a long-lost sister that got murdered by Jason. But the problem that kind of becomes is that it messes with the continuity again, because the whole Jason murder spree has only been going on for 3 days. Like, this movie takes place on Sunday the 15th, I believe. Like, you got Friday the 13th Part 2, which takes place on Friday the 13th, and that is Enter Jason. That is when Jason begins his killing spree, for what the movies tell us. Then you get to Part 3, which is Saturday, and then he continues his murder spree in 3D. Then you get to this one is on Sunday, and he continues and goes out on a huge bang with his murder spree. So, at what point did Jason kill people before and supposedly murder or kidnap or, you know, whatever happened to this guy's sister to make it like this huge month-long thing to the point where there's newspapers of this curse at Camp Crystal Lake, and they got, you know, all this reports of Jason that have been around for a while. Again, it's just this movie series does not give a fuck about continuity, and, you know, to a degree, the tone of the movies doesn't really make you call out all the time, like, what the fuck, this doesn't make any sense. But it is a negative for me, because when these movies are filmed and released in such short succession, I mean, literally a year after each other, and they're meant to be one giant story flow, they are meant to be, literally, this movie ends, this movie starts minutes afterwards. It's frustrating when you have giant continuity errors like that. I mean, they're very incompetently written continuity errors that can be fixed very easily. And it's just aggravating for me. So, small negative still, because it doesn't take away from my enjoyment of this movie or this character at all, but it's still something that I watch it and I go, what? Why? It's so easy to fix that. But all in all, guys, this is the first movie in the Friday the 13th franchise that I can genuinely say I really, really like it. Like, this is one of those, like, if somebody asked me what are some of the best slashers of the 80s that I should check out, this would be a movie I would put on that list and I would suggest to them. And I think that you can watch this movie without necessarily watching the other three, and you wouldn't miss a beat, which is another positive I probably should have put in there. But I really enjoyed this movie for the tone, for the characters, for the Jason that we get that is just badass and brutal, to the kills, to the unintentional or possibly intentional comedy. I'll never know the answer to that, but this is one of the most enjoyable Friday the 13th movies by far, in this man's opinion. So if you're a fan of this franchise or fan of the slasher genre from the 80s, this is a must-watch and a must-own. This is the cream of the crop for the original little quadrilogy of Jason movies, so definitely put some money down, go out, and buy it. So what do you guys think of Friday the 13th, the final chapter? Are you among the really huge camp that thinks this is the best of the franchise, or do you have another one that you prefer slightly more? Put all of your thoughts on the final chapter and the Friday the 13th franchise as a whole down in the comment section below, guys, and we'll talk about it. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. If you want to check out some of my social media links, check the video description below for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, my Patreon page, my new Spreadshirt, and you can also check out, please, the Stardust app. If you are not a user of the Stardust app, go ahead, look at your Google Play Store or Apple Store, download this app. It's a quick little 30-second reaction social media platform. Very fun, very easy to use. Follow me first, please, if you are a new user to this. That way I can get credit for bringing you to this app. Follow me, start posting some reactions. I'll follow you guys back and we'll have some fun. If you want to check out some more of my videos as well, as always, guys, you can check that out by clicking right over here.